It's 27 minutes after 7. You're watching the AM show. We thank you for staying right there. We have a parliamentary conversation today. If you like, if it was a movie, you'll probably say there's drama in Ghana's parliament, things unfolding every day. There's a big allegation, and the integrity of parliament has come into question here. Today, we want to talk about that and box it up with some privileges and immunity. A little education that I got sent me back to the 1992 Constitution, and there's a whole provision. Doesn't mean you can just say anything on the floor of Parliament or the premises of Parliament and get away with it. Let me introduce my guests and then we'll get the conversation going. Dr. Rashid Draman is Executive Director, African Center for Parliamentary Affairs, and certainly he's one of our favorite when it comes to parliamentary conversations. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here. And Alhaji Inusah Fuseini is a lawyer. He's Member of Parliament for Tamale Central. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you this year.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's talk about, let me start on this premise. With this whole allegation that's going back and forth. It's interesting to note, and this has to do with the appointments committee specific. It's interesting to note that Mr. Mahama Yariga, who's making this allegation, is not backtracking, he's sticking to it. Mr. Muntaka Mubarak, whose name has been also mentioned, also has a different side to the issue. And then the chairman of the committee, who is also First Deputy Speaker of Parliament, is also sticking to a different side of the issue. What's your understanding of what's been unfolding, Mr. Inusah Fuseini?
Well, thank you, Mama V, and good morning, Dr. Rashid.
Good morning, Honorable.
What is unfolded means that there is more to it than can meet the eye. The issue of bribery is an issue that is difficult to deal with. Sometimes you do not have witnesses to the act. And bribery is like that the person given and the person receiving are both guilty. And so, after having received, you can come out and say, no, I received, but it's not as bribe and I've returned it. You still be culpable. And so, that is why it's difficult to elicit evidence. You cannot. It's not possible. You go back to PCO Appeal Fury and his $5,000 issue, it died a natural death. You can't. You go back to the Vodafone deal, and then you have the same.
You go back to Amang Bagman?
It's the same because it's a question of, but this.
But is it necessarily the same? Because there are two people also in the committee who are corroborating, if you like, Ms. Ayariga's story. And they've actually issued a statement, a joint statement, and I can read that
it's more than the same. In the case of PCO, Appeal Fury, his party was in power. The Vodafone transaction was about to take place. It's alleged by PC Appeal Fury that some monies were paid out. The whole majority caucus then stood against him. In fact, they even ostracized him. The minority caucus then received him and always referred to him. He was not sent to the privileges committee. Nothing was done about the matter. And so, to raise, I've been thinking about what has been said. What would have motivated Honorable Muhammad Ayariga to come out with that statement? Because he's a lawyer. And he knows the gravity of the allegations so made. And I will want to look at it from his standpoint. Was it to impugn the integrity of the nominee, the minister? Because obviously, if it was to assist, aid, or facilitate his disqualification, that was not going to happen. Even on the vetting committee, you can see clearly that the majority side overwhelms the minority side. And so is it in Parliament. Now, until a person is disqualified on the basis of technical grounds contained in Article 78, where he's otherwise not qualified to be a member of Parliament, he's a certified bankrupt. He's been convicted of a crime involving fraud. He has dual citizenship and all those things. If it goes to his integrity and reputation, that does not work to disqualify him. The nearest Parliament had ever come to disqualifying a nominee who was otherwise qualified to be a member of Parliament was in the case of Mohamed Mubini, where he was approved by a majority decision. The committee itself approved him by a majority decision, and that meant that in Parliament we had to vote to approve him. That was the nearest we came. And so I've been thinking, what is it at all that would have moved Honorable Mohamed Ayaraga to make that allegation?
The fact that somebody gave him an envelope and told him where it was coming from.
Well, so I do not want to conclude that way. In fact, this question is very rhetoric, and I thought, and I'm of the view that Parliament should take a keen interest in that, especially coming on the back of the allegation made against Parliament by the Batramido, that the Chief Parliament of Ghana was in the business of receiving monies from parliamentary nominees or ministerial nominees before they were vetted. And so I think basically Parliament itself ought to take an interest. We ought not to just dismiss the matter. Let's look at it and satisfy ourselves that this was done bona fide, in bad faith, okay, or this was done in good faith, except that it was not intended to induce, influence, or in any way move the committee members to pass the nominee without further questions.
Dr. Draman, you know Parliament like that. You would know if nominees give members of the appointment committee some kind of envelopes just to go soft on them or something of the sort. You would know.
Thank you very much. I think this is very disturbing. It's disturbing, I think, first for the image of Parliament. Disturbing, number two, for the image of the minority caucus. Maybe let me start with the last one. You know, it's been a long time since we've seen this kind of majority in Parliament. And this is a time when you need the minority to be very, very united so that they can offer a credible kind of opposition and hold the government to account. But just at the start, we are seeing very deep divisions. Mama Ayaraga is not a junior member of Parliament. Honorable Muntaka Mubarak is not a junior member of Parliament. And to get these divisions, you know, coming at this time, I think it's not good for oversight, it's not good for accountability, and it's not good for the minority bench. Now, in terms of the image of Parliament, as Honorable said, I think Parliament needs to take a very serious interest and make sure that, yes, maybe we might not be able to prove corruption, I mean, as Honorable said, but this is becoming, you know, too many, if you like. I mean, we've mentioned Honorable Martin Amidu, mentioned PC Apiofori, mentioned Honorable Abambagbin, and there are all kinds of rumors every day about envelopes changing hands. I have not seen that before, but I mean...
But you've heard?
Yes, I've heard.
But why would a nominee want to give monies to members of the committee?
Well, I mean, a nominee would want to give money to the members of the committee because Honorable said that, you know, at the end of the day, once you are qualified to be a member of Parliament and you are qualified to be a minister, it will be very difficult for you to be disqualified on maybe other grounds. But a nominee would give money to members, particularly from the other side, because at the end of the day, when you are given the mandate and your mandate is one-sided, if your mandate is coming only from the majority, it's an embarrassment to you and to your position. So everybody who goes before the appointments committee, despite the fact that they know at the end of the day their party has the numbers and they will get, if it comes down to a vote in the worst case, they will get approved. But you will get approved and go away with some bruises that you didn't have the support of the entire country, that your victory, if you like, is a one-sided victory. And so that is why every nominee would want to have a unanimous kind of approval, so that, I mean, you don't start your mandate with controversy hanging around your neck.
But isn't this a unique story? Isn't this better in terms of evidence than the others that we've heard of? Because there are 3 people who are members of this committee, all belonging to the minority side, who say they received envelopes.
Yes.
And the intention was made known to them. Isn't this evidence enough? Indeed.
I mean, it should be evidence enough. But right now, you see, I mean, it is the minority, a small group within the minority, because it's not even the entire minority, because Honorable Muntaka is the leader of the minority on that committee. And he is saying something different from what the 3 others are saying against the institution of Parliament. Parliament issued a statement, the acting director of public affairs, saying this is not true, everybody should disregard it, and so on. I mean, today, I mean, I heard a petition has been signed by the 3 members.
Let me just read that to you. And it says, request for internal inquiry into allegation of attempted bribery of some members of the Appointments Committee of Parliament by a ministerial nominee. This is a joint request by Honorable Mahama Yariga, MP Boko Central Constituency, Honorable Samuel Okujetua Blakwa, MP North Tongue Constituency, and Honorable Al-Hassan Saibu Suhini, MP Tamale North Constituency. To you, the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament, we jointly request you to carry out an internal inquiry into the veracity of the claims made by us in the allegation of attempted bribery of the minority members of the Appointment Committee of Parliament by a ministerial committee. We, the 3 members of Parliament, will subject ourselves fully to the processes of the inquiry. Please accept our highest regards. Thank you, and this is signed by the 3. As I indicated. So this issued Sunday, 29 January 2017, copied to the Right Honorable Speaker, Parliament of Ghana, Parliament House, Accra.
Yeah, you know, this is unprecedented, because all the other allegations that we've heard in the past, we've never come to a point where members would issue such a statement and say, Mr. Speaker, institute an investigation. And I think this is an opportunity, a unique one, for Parliament to clean up its image. Because you see, we all look up to Parliament, and Honorable is sitting here, you know, when he goes to his constituency, he's a role model. And we give them the title Honorable because, you know, we expect a certain high level of integrity and conduct from them. And if this is what school children are going to be hearing coming out of our honorable house, a house that all of us give a mandate to and say, hold the executive to account, ensure that our monies are used judiciously, ensure that people don't abuse their power, and so on. Yet, the watchman himself is guilty of the responsibility that you give to him in terms of holding the executive to account. I think is no matter how you look at it, I think it's bad for the image of Parliament. Before maybe let me just make this point. Before the Speaker was selected, we issued, I think it was on your platform, they asked us what, I mean, who should qualify to be a speaker, and there were a number of candidates. And I said that instead of looking at the candidates, maybe let's look at some qualities that we should expect from a Speaker of Parliament. And then you take the candidates and match them against those qualities. And I remember we had 7 different qualities. And 2 of them are very relevant to this discussion. The first one, I think, is somebody who is fiercely independent and can stand, for Parliament and can stand for Ghanaians, even if it is going against the interests of his or her party. And number 2, I think, is somebody who is who has an eye on legacy. And so, if the Right Honourable Speaker, currently, I think at his age, given what he has done with his life and so on, I don't think he's looking for anything more than to ensure that we have a very solid institution in Parliament. And I think this is an opportunity for him to prove that.
Mr. Inusah Fuseini, you're part of minority. Do you have issues as a minority in terms of leadership?
Well, we don't really have issues in terms of leadership. I mean, when the leadership of the minority was to be determined, we had a meeting. Before the leadership was determined, there were various sides who supported one or another candidate. But when we met, we all decided that we're settling on Haruna Idrisu as a minority leader. We're settling on Aveji as his deputy. Muntaka Mohammed to maintain his position as minority chief whip. The Ibrahim Ahmed to be his deputy, the first deputy, and Honorable Dunyo to be the second deputy. And it was unanimous.
This is a chief whip, and my understanding, because I've recently received a lot of parliamentary education, chief whip is supposed to be, like the housemaster, if you like, or the prefects.
Yes.
And if he cannot get his members in line, then that's a big problem.
No, you see that the issue of crime is personal to an individual. There's no vicarious responsibility for the commission of crimes. So if you have a chief whip and one of his members alleges that a crime has been committed, he cannot say, by virtue of my position as a chief whip, you cannot make that allegation. No. Crime and criminal matters are personal to the individual. So if you commit a crime, that's why we are fighting truckers as a country.
But what is interesting, and I think what beats a lot of our minds, is the fact that I am not saying, I'm making the allegation, this is direct between the two of us. You gave me an envelope. I'm saying that you gave me. And you're saying that you didn't, and you're swearing that you didn't.
Well,
I mean, I don't know. It's...
You wouldn't expect the chief whip. What I would say, and agree with you, is that probably because of the unity of purpose, or the unity of the group, the singleness of purpose, the members who feel very strongly about the allegations they are making ought to have first discussed that with the minority leadership, so that they build consensus on how to approach the issue. I believe we will come to the issue of parliamentary privileges and immunities. And you will see that clearly there are 2 aspects of parliamentary privileges and immunities: non-liability and inviolability.
Okay, so now that you're there, why don't you just carry it forward?
Non-liability, when a member of parliament makes the statement on the floor of the house, because it derives from the Bill of Rights in the 17th century, around 1648 or 1684, that look, a member of parliament must not be obstructed or impeded in making statements on the floor of the house. That is the essence of Parliament. And that is a great tool, weapon, that a member of Parliament can use. And many people have used the privileges to the service of their constituencies and their nations. A classical case is in Australia around 1986. There was a Ponzi scheme going on. Nobody could talk about the Ponzi scheme because nobody had evidence. If an MP got private investigators to go into the matter and give him evidence, the only way he could say that and be on the safe side was in Parliament. So if he made an allegation in Parliament and it turned out to be false, he will be insulated against criminal or civil prosecution. Now, but he alerted the media that he was going to make such a statement. And so everybody was ready for him. He made the statement on the floor of the House. The media took it on. The internal security organs were now compelled to investigate the scheme. The scheme immediately stopped. Yes, it turned out that his investigators were right. He was able to save his constituents from the scheme, the fraud that was being perpetrated against them. So, you see, that's a classic case of using your privilege in Parliament. And you remember the Harasoya case in the Third Republic, when his colleague member of Parliament accused him, he had brought in buses, and his colleague member of Parliament accused him of taking a cut and bringing in the buses. He said it on the floor of the House. The only thing Harasoya could say was to dare him to repeat the statement outside the floor of the House, because he was insulated. Now, in the inviolability matter, it is in instances where somebody is accused of corruption, because you still want to safeguard the integrity, reputation of Parliament. You want to instill confidence in the people who have elected these representatives to Parliament. Do you investigate the matter? In some jurisdictions, parliamentarians, especially in Italy, parliamentarians have voted to refuse an investigation into the conduct of MPs who have been accused of corruption.
Can we do the same here?
Otherwise, we should not do same. We are a growing democracy. We want to fight corruption. We should allow investigations. And then we have, you see, the fact that we have always spoken dispassionately about the need for parliamentarians to be upright and to champion the COFOR's call for zero tolerance for corruption means that any time, and I agree with you, Rashid, Doctor, and I agree with the petitioners, that Parliament must at least show interest in what is happening.
But how can you make an allegation based on hearsay, make it public, very public, and expect an inquiry?
There's no hearsay. It's direct evidence.
How is that?
He says, I received an envelope. It's not that somebody told him that somebody received an envelope. He says, I received an envelope. And I was told that that envelope came from the majority, no, from the chairman of the vetting committee.
Is that not hearsay?
I was told he received. It's the matter of the envelope. It's the matter of the envelope. Did he receive or not? He says he received. From whom did he receive the envelope? He says from his chief whip. And his chief whip told him. So hearsay evidence is not, it's not dismissible per se. It's the weight. It goes to weight. What weight do you attach to the statement that the majority lead, the chief whip, told Ayerega? Can you say that the weight, the probability that the statement, the money was actually given to him by the chairman of the vetting committee far outweighs the fact that this money could not have come from the chairman of the committee. It goes to weight. Okay, but hearsay evidence is not dismissible.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Draman, back to the issue of privileges. How do you define on the floor of Parliament?
Well, how we define on the floor of Parliament is whatever you say during the course of parliamentary proceedings and what you say at the level of the committee or in whichever space that that Parliament is meeting. But I want to go back to, just touch a little bit on the two, categorizations that Honorable gave. The
liability.
The liability, which is non-accountability. That's a British tradition.
Yeah.
That you are protected in terms of whatever you say, and that even extends to the witnesses who show up before Parliament, so that in the course of your work, you don't want to be inhibited, you don't want to be anything to impede the work of a member of Parliament. And the non-violability is the French tradition. It's derived from the French tradition, and that extends to the fact that you cannot bring criminal proceedings to a member of Parliament and so on and so forth. And people frown upon that, because if the matter is criminal, I think it ought to be treated as such. And so I think we have so many different variants of the privileges and so on. But I think at the end of the day, what is important is that, we shouldn't allow public officers or members of Parliament, for that matter, to hide behind any provision in the standing orders. I'm holding the standing orders here, and from order 20 to about 22, it talks about the immunity and privileges of members of Parliament. You cannot hide behind this and commit a crime and say that the law should protect you. So I think that is the whole issue about these privileges and immunities. But I want to, before you maybe ask your next question, I want to talk about two things. I think the first one is, this our Parliament needs a lot of reform, honestly. In this day and age, I think members of Parliament have no business taking envelopes from their leaders or the chairpersons of committees and so on. Don't we have a finance department in Parliament? Don't members of Parliament have bank accounts? I think these might sound a bit,
I think they said they have different ways of taking the allowances, and what you mentioned, those are options.
No, those are options, and those are options if we are serious about fighting corruption. We should take the human element, we should take, the interface. And it's not pleasant to hear that members of Parliament go around taking envelopes from whether it's their leader or, the committee clerks and so on, as their sitting allowance. And why can't all these be paid into their accounts once the work is done? Now, the second issue that I wanted to talk about is, again, going back to the minority. You pose a question to Honorable whether what is happening doesn't suggest a division and so on. I think, in my opinion, it seriously suggests that. Because the fact that the whip, who is supposed to be the headmaster, the head prefect as you described him, couldn't even know that this was going on and that one of his members is going to go public, suggests that I think there's some serious problem. And the earlier they look at this, the better. Because we don't want a situation where you have a party that has a huge majority in Parliament, and you have an opposition that is disorganized and that we can't rely on to provide alternatives. That's going to be very bad for our democracy. Because already, even with a united front, we have all been worried about the fact that when you have a party controlling the presidency, a party controlling Parliament, that alone is disturbing in itself. And then you have the added disadvantage of a minority that is starting its work on the basis of a divided front.
There was a question I wanted to ask. can you stand in Parliament, not, you may not be in the main chamber, but in the premises, and speak to a radio station and make an allegation of bribery and still be protected by these privileges and immunities?
This is a vexed question, and the jurisprudence of that clearly requires further investigation, further interrogation. You see, if I'm doing my parliamentary work, I'm in the committee, and there is something going on in the committee that I feel very strongly about, and I leave the committee room temporarily and makes an allegation. Technically, I will still be within the committee and still protected. But just what we ought to, as members of Parliament, like yesterday when I was hired, yesterday we had a talk delivered by Honorable Papa Osakuma on the immunities, privileges, ethics, and values of members of Parliament. What we need to do, and especially with this our seventh Parliament, is to try to build consensus within leadership and the groups, especially now that there is an overwhelming majority, 168 members of Parliament from the majority. In fact, technically speaking, they don't need the minority to conduct business, a particular parliamentary business in the House. So you need to be extra careful, you need to work extra hard, and you need to present a united front. Because they are just going to run you. If you get into Parliament and even watch the sitting arrangements, some members of the majority are sitting on the traditional minority seats. Because the minority is simply overwhelmed. And so, when you and I see where Dr. Rashid is coming from, when you begin your parliamentary work with a perceptible division in leadership, then you will be weakening your position by that division. People might not be willing to give of their all in this difficult situation. So I think that I will invite Honorable Baba Yerega, or use your platform to invite Honorable Baba Yerega, Soyini, and Ablakwa to sit down with the leadership of Parliament. Indeed, if it's true that the nominee attempted influencing, this way I won't even call it influencing, because it appears to me that the vetting was done, and thereafter the envelope was
because given. Of course there were issues. There were issues that the committee wanted to take a look at again. So if you remember when the names came out, I think there were two people who were outstanding. That was Asafo Mafo and Wache Jakom. Those were the outstanding cases that the appointment committee wanted to investigate further. So this could be...
If it was by virtue of the outstanding issues that the Minister nominee decided to water down the impact, the gravity of the call for further and better particulars about certain matters that have come before the committee, that could pass as an inducement.
But can I also add that Mr. Jacko has also refuted this allegation as well.
You see
so everybody, it's almost like the center can't hold because everybody is disassociating themselves and disputing.
Things are falling apart. No, you see, I've tried not to mention the minister's name. So I want to be on the safe side by saying the minister.
The nominee. Exactly.
You see, because it's really an attack on the integrity and reputation of a person goes to the dignity and standard of that person. People might take it lightly But I'm telling you, whether or not the minister nominee did it, he feels the pains now. If he did it, he will feel pains. That this thing, we are talking about it. He did it in good faith, probably. But it's turning out to be something else. If he didn't do it, then it's worse off.
Why is that?
Well, you see, who is the dignity of a person, the Constitution? The dignity of a person is inviolable. And what is your dignity? You as Mongavi, the values that you stand for.
So, you know, I've been thinking, Dr. Roman, should these three had just kept quiet, not make the issue public? How do you blow something? How do you let everybody else know what is happening? Because if they had gone to leadership, it probably wouldn't have come out. It probably wouldn't get resolved. There probably wouldn't be an inquiry.
Well, I think, yes. I mean, maybe nobody would have heard of this. And right now, we don't know whether it is true or not. So I think we are treading cautiously. Yeah. But I think sometimes in the life of institutions, sometimes you get some radicals and some, I mean, if you like, I mean, I will call these as the whistleblowers. I think now is the time. As I said, I want to go back to my initial statements again. We've heard these things over and over and over again. Honorable Martin Amidu issued a statement. Up to now, I was hoping that it will be called before the Privileges Committee, but I don't think Parliament has mustered the courage yet to get him. I mean, I don't know whether that means that some of what he said, which the majority leader actually agreed. He said some of them are true. Coming on the back of that, I think we can't take this lightly. We can't take this lightly. We can't just dismiss this as maybe I mean, three people who are disgruntled and unhappy, and I mean, they just decided to make it up. And I think going further by issuing this statement, petition to the Speaker and calling for an investigation, I think means that there's more to it than what we are hearing.
I kind of, so could it be that it was just these three people who perhaps received the envelope? Because there are other minority members on this committee.
It could be that these three are anti-establishment. They just like in the words of Dr. Rashid, they are whistleblowers, and they don't want the establishment, the status quo of the establishment, to remain the same.
So I've got another curious question: why haven't you members of Parliament come out? Because this wouldn't be the first time then from this experience.
Yes, so he mentioned Honorable Batrabidu. Why he's not been held before the Privileges Committee is that he made a statement at the time that the committees were not set up. I remember a member of Parliament on the majority side attempted to raise the issue on the floor of the House. The Speaker said that that was not tangential to what we were discussing. I rose up to support that member, but I had already spoken. And you know the rule in Parliament. They had to give opportunity to someone else. I think that these allegations need to be, Parliament must have the courage to investigate some of the allegations.
But how do you investigate yourself? Because it's the same Parliament, it's the same legislature.
Yeah, and
can we have another person institute
and that's again maybe speaking to the issues of privileges and conduct of our members of Parliament and so on, and looking at what are the kind of mechanisms that can be put in place to check some of these alleged abuses. One is the internal, which is the Privileges Committee. But I don't think that today in this country, people would have a lot of courage and trust in an internal body, as in the Privileges Committee, to look into these matters, because we are already seeing a sharp division. The leadership, the Parliament as an institution on the one hand, and then these three MPs on the other hand. So if we are going to leave this to the Privileges Committee to deal with, people are not going to have any trust in the outcome. In some countries, I think there have been some quasi-judicial kind of mechanisms that have been put in place, an outside body that will look into this, which is, I think, will be more kind of trustworthy than if we leave this in the hands of members who are supposed to be judges and so on in their own court.
What would you propose with this specific case?
Well, I would propose an outside body that would look into this, of course, reporting to Parliament. We can trust that body more than we can trust, because a number of times issues have gone before the Privileges Committee and we haven't heard anything. When Honorable Abambabin made that statement about, his colleagues and so on, the issue went to the Privileges Committee, and I believe there were other instances, and I cannot recall what exactly came out of it. And Honorable Martin Amidu, this current issue, and then going back to history, PCRP Ofori and so on, I think if we have an outside body that is put together by Parliament to look into this, an outside body that would do its work in a very open and transparent manner so that we can all follow what is going on. And at the end of the day, whatever comes out of it, if the members are the ones that are guilty, I think the standing orders prescribe some sanctions. If it's a nominee that is guilty, I think we know that our current president came on the platform of fighting corruption. So we would all know what to expect if indeed the findings go against his nominee.
Okay.
But whatever it is, I would very strongly support Honorable that all members have to take an interest in this. The leadership of Parliament must take an interest in this. I was on the platform with the Right Honorable Speaker before he became Speaker. And they were asking him whether he would like to be Speaker and what are some of the things that he would do. And I remember, I think he was very strong on these issues of making sure that we have a sanitized institution. And this is an opportunity, and we are all watching to see what he is going to do.
Okay, so I see two committees clearly emerging from this. One is a committee set up by Parliament, which might include persons from outside, as an ad hoc committee to deal with a matter of national importance. That has been done by Parliament before. You remember the investigation into the corruption in the judiciary. That was not done by Parliament. That was not done by members of Parliament. That was done by a combined a team of members of Parliament and persons outside Parliament. That to investigate this particular matter, you need credibility. You need to assure the Ghanaian public that you are not going to wishy-washy the whole matter, the whole investigation coming to nothing. The second committee is the Privileges Committee. The Privileges Committee's powers are invoked when there's a breach of a privilege. Okay? Now, you will see clearly some actors have been named. The Honorable Mohamed Ayerga himself is an actor who has been named. Now, Okudjatu and Sohide have added themselves to the matter. Abwachik appeared as a witness before the
appointment committee.
Or a nominee, if you want to mention, you may call him that. Now, so if the Honorable Mohamed Mutaka has made statements, that they all made these statements riding on the back of the privileges that they have been given as members of Parliament. And they have continued to make those statements based on the privileges. 3 times. What privileges that allows you to make statements in the course of your legislative work that will not bring criminal or civil actions against you? 2, your immunities. That while you are on the way to Parliament, while you are in Parliament, you cannot be served with processes, you act as a juror and all those things. There are immunities for you. And when in Parliament or outside Parliament, you conduct yourself as to bring the institution of Parliament into disrepute. You are in contempt of Parliament. You will be in contempt of Parliament. And if you are in contempt of Parliament or potentially contemptuous, or your act is potentially contemptuous of Parliament, you appear before the Privileges Committee. So you see clearly that we have two committees here. And I agree entirely with you that you see you need to form a committee which will look at the issues dispassionately and probably rid Parliament of this image of receiving envelopes when they are not entitled to those envelopes.
You've been on several committees, Mr. Inusah Fuseini. Indeed, you're ranking member on Legal Constitutional in this 7th Parliament. Have you received envelopes?
Oh, yesterday I received one. I received one, and that's why I think that you are right. Sometimes it's even demeaning. We went for a lecture. I was a chairman of the lecture. I drove from Accra to Kofredua. I chaired two such, this is because the other person did not come to chair. So when I was going, I goodbye them. And then the clerk called me back. He said, you have to come and sign for your envelope. I think the proper dignified way is probably to pay the money into my account, because you have mine.
Yeah.
But during your committee sittings, I mean, you deal with other issues apart from Parliament itself. Sometimes you invite people to appear before the committees. Do they give you envelopes?
No, they don't give envelopes. What happens is, sometimes a ministry is sponsoring a bill, and the Araku Adi Committee has said we should desist from that. A ministry is sponsoring a bill. It wants you to consider the bill expeditiously. It knows that if you are going to sit in Parliament, the members of Parliament will be moving in and out of the committee meetings. The ministry or the promoters of the bill might carry all the members of Parliament to a place outside Accra. They don't bring buses. And the German embassy, and even your parliamentary center used to do it very well. They have a graded scheme where they calculate the mileage and the amount of money you are entitled to for fuel. Now when you come, then you sign for the fuel, so that they can gather all of you together at one location, and then you expedite action on the bill. That, I can assure you, that's happened. But
you get envelopes for sitting as committee members?
No, you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to. What we have done, we are supposed to take allowances for sitting. Committee sittings. We used to take them any time we sat. The other committee said, no, don't do that. That is part of your work. So what now happens is that periodically, every quarter, they aggregate what allowances we are entitled to pay to us. You are not, by the present arrangement, entitled to receive any money from any committee.
Dr. Draman, in view of what we know, what the privileges and immunities are, how do you think Parliament, apart from the recommendations that you've given, that a committee can be set up to deal with this matter? We have majority and we have minority. And this morning I was actually reflecting on the leadership of Joe Asewusu as appointment committee chair, because you know this is a new committee under the 7th Parliament, and he's chairing. And the work is not even completed now because there are people going to appear before the committee. How do you think he can, deal with this issue, knowing that there's a sitting today?
Well, I mean, this is very difficult because already even before this bribery allegation, I mean, there were very serious issues about the fact that the minority group was already saying he was not fair to some of them. I mean, it's politics. He belongs to the majority side. That is to be expected. And I had occasion to say that, sometimes, I mean, I think the nominees should be given the opportunity to just speak because some of the issues on which, for instance, he rules some members off are not really very serious issues. I mean, the nominees can, I think, comfortably address those issues. Because you see, when you sit in that chair, the perception is that you are going to be biased. Because first you are a member of parliament, second deputy speaker, first deputy speaker, you belong to the majority. So I think he has a lot of work to do in terms of making sure that he is fair, because that's one of the key. We developed what is called a formula for a committee to be effective, and one of the key things, the central thing, is the role of the person who sits in the chair. He or she must be seen to dispense, to be fair, I think, in terms of how he handles the proceedings of the House. He or she must be seen, to be somebody who is tolerant of the views of all sides that are represented on the committee. But I want to come back to this issue about the envelopes, about the sponsorships and so on. One Right Honorable Duajao took over as Speaker 4 years ago. One of the first statements he made was that he's going to make sure that this culture of committees being sponsored by the ministries, departments and agencies that they are supposed to oversee to go and do their work ceases. I think 4 years down the road, I don't think this has stopped. I have seen countries where when Parliament is preparing its budget, they make sure that they have enough resources to anticipate all these things that they are supposed to do, so that they don't have to rely on any government department or agency to fund them to go and do work, to go and provide oversight over that government agency. I think it's a slap in the face of our Parliament, and it's an insult to the integrity of members of Parliament. And I see we are currently doing a research on the role of parliaments in the fight against corruption, looking at many countries, including our own country here. In fact, as I speak, one of my colleagues, a professor from McGill University, is here with me. The data that we are seeing, I think in terms of our parliament, in terms of what is happening about our country, I think it's not good. Yet, if you do development as a developing country, as Honorable alluded to earlier, anything that you do, that attention is not paid to Parliament, which is the body that gives all of us the kind of perfect insurance that our resources will be used judiciously. Donor resources, when they make contributions to the development of our country, are used judiciously. If you ignore Parliament, then I think you are ignoring a key accountability institution. But we also have to make sure that Parliament is up and doing. Parliament is above reproach, and that is why this is a unique opportunity, and I think we are all going to watch the Right Honourable Speaker and the leadership to take the opportunity and cleanse Parliament of this canker. Because I think there's a proverb which says that soap is supposed to clean, and if the soap itself is dirty, then you have a big problem. And I think that that's what we are facing right now, and we need to clean the soap.
The final say to you. Is there a minority meeting?
There will definitely be a meeting. If there's no one, I'll call for one. Let me say that what is happening is not only, it's not limited to the Ghana Parliament, and even parliaments in Africa. I mean, you recall what happened in Britain recently. You recall what happened in France recently. Now, you need courageous people to take the bull by the horn and deal with the canker.
Yeah.
It's always so. Because of these immunities and privileges that we enjoy, sometimes we cannot use them. And so I think that basically what is happening is good. Let's seize the opportunity to investigate and stamp our foot on corruption in Parliament. You see, it's just happening at a bad time. It's happening at a time when the minority is weak. It's weak in terms of numbers. And so people are going to read a lot of politics into what is happening. But this clearly is a unique opportunity. Osei Wusu's leadership, I will invite him to move cautiously against dismissive questions that are acts of nominees. You see, recently, Trump presented his nominees to Congress. For the first time, in about 10 days, only 3 of his nominees were approved, and that was a record. Because Obama had more than 10 of his nominees approved within the first few weeks. And you know what the Democrats said? Democrats said that he was bringing in people who were millionaires and wealthy people in society. And the more reason why those people ought to be vetted and their backgrounds ought to be checked. You get me? So when you ask, it's not, I mean, what the Democratic leader said was not in any way suggested that they were going to disqualify them, but that they certified themselves that these people were not engaged in any shady deals. So it's important that he allows them, and all the people they have nominated have people in their own right who have served and achieved. Allow them to answer those questions.
Okay. All right. I know I said final, but this is just, again, my curiosity. Because I know that you're coming from a peculiar place. There's Tamale North, Tamale Central, Tamale South. Is there an issue, Haruna Idrisu, Mahama Yarga, you know, is there something? Because we heard of a lot of things.
Well, there's, I mean, you know, even me, they said myself and Haruna Idrisu have had problems and all. You see, all this is about the type of politics that we are practicing. The largest that people think they can benefit from you by just following and owing allegiance to you and throwing the support for you. I mean, for you, and then they start competing among themselves.
So there's tension between you and Haruna.
There's no tension. There actually have never been tension between me and Haruna.
Yeah.
Okay, but you see, but when you become a leader, you will want to offer effective leadership to your constituents. So before I became a member of parliament, before Haruna Idrisu became a member of parliament, we were almost together every day. We used to ride in my car or his car. But as a member of parliament and as a minister, you expect that I will still lead that life because I ought to be more responsible and deal with issues of national importance.
All right.
And that by his support, his constituents or people who are close to him will interpret that to be, no, I'm drawing from him, or my people will withdraw from him, or my people will interpret the fact that we are not close again as Haruna withdrawing from me. But no.
Is he a good choice as minority leader?
It's obviously a fantastic choice.
Okay, all right. So good to know. We'll see how things go today. And I'd like to say thank you. It's always really good talking to you, Dr. Rashid Rahman, Executive Director, African Center for Parliamentary Affairs, and Alhaji Inusah Fuseini, who is a lawyer, member of Parliament for Tamale Central, and we'll be training very soon here. Now that, you know, he's in opposition, he has a lot of time to do that. So there will be some gym sessions with Mr. Fuseini very soon, and we'll be airing it here on the AM show. So watch out for that. I'm grateful, gentlemen. Now you've seen the promo on air, and I'm sure you're wondering what it's all about. I'm talking about Joy News' latest Hotline documentary titled Abdallah. Now, here's an excerpt of the documentary, which will air later tonight at 6:30 p.m.
notion that anyone who visits the psychiatric hospital is a mental patient is a devastating misconception, crippling the Ghanaian society. At the mention of the psychiatric hospital, what comes to mind is madness and nothing else. The Accra Psychiatric Hospital was established in 1906 as a prison or asylum facility with the purpose of treating mentally ill patients. Cases of mental illness range from schizophrenia, usually seen in the streets of Accra, to depression, a condition out of every 10 Ghanaian women, 7 suffer from. There are also bipolar disorders, among other illnesses. The hospital takes cases from countries such as Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and La Côte d'Ivoire. The facility used to have about 1,300 patients until a few years ago when the hospital decided to go on a decongestion operation. Treatment of mental illness comes with various approaches which range from the use of medication, psychological reorientation or redirection, social workers who look at the social matters that may affect the individual, and occupational therapy, which uses handiwork training in areas such as carpentry, masonry, drama, therapy, painting, amongst others, to stimulate the minds. Of patients to reform them into society. This notwithstanding, the notion that mental illness and creativity are linked is so pronounced in the public consciousness that it is rarely challenged. Inside the occupational therapy unit is where my tale begins.
Abdullah has been here for many years. What really happened was he's well, actually. He doesn't even sleep here. He goes home and comes back. He has that special knowledge and skill of artwork.
I got to know him 4 years ago when I was posted here.
Before I was employed here, Abdullah was here. That was 1987.